Here in Siman Tov Kuf Lamed Zayin, we are on the top of page Zayin, which is the page following page 12. The Mechaber says in Sif Aleph, Dover ha'oved muter la'asoso b'chol hamoed below shinui. Something that is a Dover ha'oved, which something that if you don't do it, it will be a loss of money. It is muter to be done on Chol Hamoed even without any kind of change. The Ramah writes, Miu b'chol ma de'efsher lahakel b'tircha yasa. The Ramah writes that whatever you could do to limit the amount of tircha, when you're doing your Dover ha'oved, you should do. Lefikach, therefore, it says a Shulchan Aruch Beis HaShlachin. When you have a Beis HaShlachin, which Ramah says, Pirish ha'aretz hatzmeya. You have a ground that's very thirsty. A Beis HaShlachin is an irrigation field. It doesn't get enough water just from the rain. It has to be irrigated. Shehisr lahashkosa kodam hamoed. If you started watering this field already before Yantiv muter lahashkosa, you are allowed to continue watering it on Chol Hamoed. Shekevan shehisr lahashkosa kodam lachein. Since you started watering it before Yantiv, im lo yashkeno achshav tipased. If you're not going to continue with the watering on Chol Hamoed, the field is going to get ruined. So that's an example of a Dover Ovid. It's a Beis HaShlach, an irrigation field that you started watering before Yantif. You can continue the watering on Chol Hamoed. Aval stei habal. But a stei habal, which is the opposite, that is a field that gets enough nourishment and enough water just from the rain. She'ein mashkin osa elo lashbicha yoser. So you only water that field to make it a little better, but it's not a Dover Ovid. It's not going to get ruined if you don't water it. So then, aser lashkosa, then it's going to be forbidden to water such a field. So to summarize the Mechaber and Sif Aleph, any Dover ha'oved you're allowed to do on Chol Hamoed even without a shinui. Therefore, a Beis HaShlachin, an irrigation field that you started watering before Yantif, you can continue watering it on Chol Hamoed. However, a Beis Habal, it doesn't need irrigation, it just needs the rain that comes down from Shemayim, so then you are not allowed to water it, even if it is to make it better. Says the Mishaburis of Katan Aleph Dover ha'ovid. What Salomar means to say, Shim lo ya'aseyu achshav yavo lidei hefsid. If you're not going to do it now, it's going to lead to a loss. V'im hadover etzlo besafek. Let's say you're not sure if it's Dover ha'ovid or not. You're not sure if it's going to get ruined or not get ruined. So I am b'Magen Avram shemekil. So look in the Magen Avram where he is lenient in a case of a Dover ha'ovid besafek. Ubechai Adam Kosav Sheyaseu Ayidei Akum V'lo Ba'atzmo. The Chai Adam says you should get a guy to do it for you. You should not do it by yourself when it's a suffix. The Ayim B'Bir Halacha. Look in the Bir Halacha Shetzidadnu the Kavanas HaMagen Avram who Gam came, that we have a tzad to say that the intention of the Magen Avram when he says b'suffix you can be mekil, what he really means to say is Im oso hachshashu chosheshu matzui sheyavo. If the concern that he has that might happen is a very strong possibility, so that's when the Magen Avram says that meisafik you can do it. V'oz nira diyesh l'hakel gam ayidei atzmo. Then it appears that you can be lenient to do it yourself when it's a very likely possibility. But even the Magen Avram, if it's not such a likely possibility, he would also agree with the Chai Adam that you should rather have a guy do it. But if it is a davar that's matzui that will possibly happen, so then you should do it yourself, but you should do it in private if possible. Look in the Pri Megadim that he writes, that according to this Magen Avram, yesh lahakel nami b'safek tzarech hamoed. So not only can you be lenient lefi the Magen Avram by a suffix Dover ha'ovid, you also can be lenient according to the Magen Avram in a suffix whether it is in need of the moed or not. V'hainu gamkein, and this is also similar in be'einav karov she'ezel tzarech hamoed. If it's very likely in your eyes that it will be a tzarech hamoed, then you could do it. So again, we're saying the Magen Avram says a suffix Dover ha'ovid is mutter, but we're adjusting it only if it's a probable suffix, and so too a suffix tzarech hamoed also be mutter according to him, but again, only something that's likely to be, in fact, the tzarech hamoed. Now there's two important notes over here. Let's see note number one. When it is in your hands, it's in your possibility to hold back from doing malacha. Kegon, for example, shenikru min olav me'at. Your shoes tore a little bit. V'im lo yisaknem yikru lagamri. If you don't fix the shoes on Chol Hamoed, you continue wearing them, they're going to get totally ruined. That's called a Dover ha'ovid. Aval biyado liknos chadoshim. But you're able to buy other shoes. Ubekach lihimana me'asiyas malacha. And you can hold back from doing the malacha of fixing your shoes by simply buying a new pair of shoes. So Kosav Shatzion Lakavan, the Shatzion will tell us later on, She'ein Zeh Nelshav Kedavar Ovid. That's not called a Davar Ovid because it's not necessarily going to be a loss. You don't have to do the malacha. Just go ahead and buy yourself another pair of shoes. V'chein ba'ofen she'im lo yisakneim lo yikru lagamri. And so too, if you don't fix the shoes, they won't get totally ruined. Elorak yigdal hakera. It will just get torn a little bit more, but it won't get totally ruined. So the Mishabur writes over there as well, Sha'asu l'saknem, you can't fix them. Kevan shedavar ha'ovid nechshav rak kasher ikar hadavar nifsad. A davar ha'ovid is when the ikar item, the shoe, will get ruined. Not that the tear in the shoe will get a little bigger, when the shoe will get ruined. Aval kashein ikar hadavar nifsad, but if the ikar item, the shoe, is not going to get ruined. Elorak miskalkel ma'at yoser, it's going to get a little bit worse. Ein zeh davar ha'ovid, that's not called a davar ha'ovid. That's a very important point that they're telling us over here in note number 1. If you look at note number 3, he explains, why is it that Chazal are matir to do malacha on Chol Hamoed? If it's going to be a davar ha'ovid, it's going to be a loss of money. So Kosav HaRitzvah, the Ritzvah writes, She'isr malacha b'moed hu mishum tircha. The reason why malacha is asr on Chol Hamoed, whether it's daraisa or derabbanan, is because we shouldn't be matriach. We don't want tircha. Ukidei shelo l'mayit b'simchas haregel, because tircha will take away from the joy of the regel. We want a person to be b'simcha. Therefore, don't do malacha, which is a tircha, which takes you away from your simcha. Ulefikach, therefore, says the Ritva, Meleches davar ha'ovid yitiru chachamim. Therefore, Chazal will matter something that's a davar ha'ovid. Kedei shelo yidag al aveidaso v'yimna misimchas yomtov. Because otherwise, you're going to be worried about your loss, and it's going to, that itself is going to hold you back from yomtov, simchas yomtov. And therefore, we'd rather do the malacha than not do the malacha and be stressed out over it. And therefore, they will matter a davar ha'ovid because that will restore and be mekayim more of your simchas yomtov than not do malacha. Continues the Mishaburas of Katan Beis. Ha'aretz hatzmeya, we said, if you have a Beis HaShlochin, which the Ramah taiched as a land that is thirsty, va'ayefa l'mayim, it's tired, meaning it's thirsty for water, shim lo yashkena tamid tipasid. If you don't water it constantly, it's going to get ruined. So there, once you started watering it already before Yontif, and that will get ruined if you don't water on Chol Hamoed, that's grounds to water on Chol Hamoed, midin davar ha'ovid. Says in Mishaburas of Katan Gimel, shekevan shehischil, aval imlo hischil lo tipasid al yidei ichor eze yamin va'aser. It's only bedaf, like the Mechaber says, you started watering it already before. Once you start, you can't stop. So then you can continue on Chol Hamoed. If you never started, so just wait a few more days and only start after Yontif, and then there will be no grounds to do it on Chol Hamoed. It would not be a davar ha'ovid in a Beis HaShlochin. However, the Mechaber contrasted that with the Stei Haba, which the Mishabura says in Savkatan Daled, Pirish Shedai Lo B'Mitar HaShamayim. It's enough for this field with the rain that comes from Shamayim, and therefore it's not a davar ha'ovid, it's only lashbich, like the Mechaber says, and that you're not allowed to do malacha for on Chol Hamoed. Continues the Mechaber in Siv Beis. Afilu bebeis hashlochin, even by beis hashlochin, which we just explained in Sif Al, that it is a davar ha'ovid once you started watering it before Yontif, and you are allowed to water it on Chol Hamoed. But lo yitiru elahecha deleka tirchi yisera. We're only matter this davar ha'ovid if it doesn't involve a great exertion. It doesn't involve a tirchi yisera. Kigon min ha'ma'ayon. For example, if you're going to water it from an existing spring, Bein Chadash Bein Yashim, whether it's a new spring that was just dug before Yontif or it's an old spring, either way, Shu Mamshicha Umashke, you're just going to direct the spring towards the field. That's allowed to be done. That's not a Tirchi Yisera, and that would be mutter for the davar ha'ovid of the Beis HaShlochin. Avalo Yidle V'Yashke Min Abrecha. But what you shouldn't do is you shouldn't go and draw water from a pool, a pond of water, or from rainwater that has gathered together in a pit, because that already is a tircha yisera, and therefore that would not be allowed. Even if you have one row of crops, part of it, half of it is higher up, and half of it is lower down, you can't draw water even from the lower place to the higher place. That would be a problem. So again, the Mechaber is telling us that even in the case of a Beis HaShlochin, which we said is mutter for a davar ha'ovid, if you started watering it before Yontif, it's only mutter on Chol Hamoed if it's not done with a tirchi yisera, i.e. you can direct a mayan, whether it's new or old, towards the field that you need watered. However, to start drawing water, getting buckets and drawing water from a brecha or from a pit that's filled with rainwater, that already is a tircha gedola, and that would not be allowed. It says the Mishaburas of Katan, hey, Bein Chadash. So we said that you can direct the spring, whether it's new or old. So Sefkatan Hey says Ben Chadash, whether it's a new spring, Shehischil in Boa Mechadash, it had just started bringing forth water. The Kamash Mulan, the Chiddush is that even though it's new, the Lo Chayshina, we're not concerned. Kevan Shechadashu, that maybe since it's a new spring, Dilma Yiplu Ksalav, maybe the walls around the spring are going to collapse, they're going to fall down. Va'asi Lasaki Mamoid, you're going to come fix it up. Inami, or maybe the concern would be or maybe if the walls collapse and the spring is no longer giving forth water, you might come and bring water from another place, and that would be a tirchi yaseira. So says the Mishabura, the Chiddush of the Mechaber, when he says you can use the spring and you can direct it, whether it's old or new. The Chiddush in new is that there's always a risk that a new spring, the walls might collapse, it might stop working, and then we're concerned either you might come to fix up the spring, which you're not allowed to do on Chol Hamoed, or you might go draw water from somewhere else, which should be a tirchi yaseira. We're not worried about that. You can use any spring, even a new spring, by directing it towards your field. What you can't do is use a brecha or a pit of megishamim. Says the Mishabura Sekatan Vav HaBrecha. Brecha is mayim mechunasim bebor amok. This is water that's gathered in a deep pit. And that's considered a big burden because you have to draw the water out from the pit with a vessel. That's a tirchi yaseira, so that's not allowed even by a davar of it to water a beis hashlachin. You also can't be drawing water from megishamim that's gathered together. Sivkatan zayin va'afilu eino dola elo mamshich men beregel. Even if you're not drawing the water with a bucket, you're just directing it with your foot. Dahainu, the case is shabur o mokom hamukubutz me'ageshamim, that either the pit with the gathered water or this place where the rainwater has collected is moleal kol gedosav. It's filled over the rim. It's mamish overflowing. The oz ain't sarach lidlos. In that case, you don't have to be drawing any water. All you have to do is direct it. Still, it's going to be aser. Says the Mishabura, why? Since it's not a spring, there's no constant flow of water. It's just gathered water over there, gathered rainwater, or gathered pond water, whatever it is, but the water is going to empty out, so we're afraid if you're going to use it, even though now it's overflowing, it may end up having less water, and you'll come to draw the water. And by Mayan also, by the spring also, you're allowed to direct it with your feet. But to start drawing the water, even when it involves a spring, that already wouldn't be allowed. Anytime you have to start drawing water with a bucket or a pitcher, that's already considered a tircha, and that wouldn't be allowed. The Mechaber ended off and said, even if you have one row of crops, one's higher, one's lower, you can't start drawing water from the lower part to the higher part. Says the Mishabura, certainly if you have two separate rows, achas gavoa mechaverta, one is higher than its friend, ein dola me'atachtona, you cannot draw from the lower one, lahashkos halyona, to water the upper row. V'im haya aruga shel yarak, however, if the upper aruga was of vegetables, v'kavanaso kedei l'achal mamoed, and your intention was to water it so you could eat those vegetables on the yontif, mutter, that's permissible. Uked l'kamei b'sivdalag. We'll see later on that tirchi yaseira would be allowed if it is for ochel nefesh. So if it's crops that you're going to be able to actually eat on Chol Hamoed or Yontif, then you can draw water to water that field of Yerek, and that we'll see in Mitzvah tomorrow. But we'll stop here and we'll pick up tomorrow Mitzvah with Sif Gimel.